if someone says, what do you do? I say, I'm an entertainer. Because I used to say I'm a historian. But you know what I learned early on in the realm of my being in show business and charging money for tickets? History has very little value in our society, but entertainment has massive value.
That was Charles Phoenix, entertainer and Americana ambassador. In this episode, he tells us about celebrating classic and kitschy American life and style. Just keep on listening. 2, 3, 4. Hey there, podcast people. John here, and you are listening to Make Moves. In this episode, we are chatting with Charles Phoenix. He is an entertainer in the truest sense of the word because everything he does seems to be entertaining. I can't begin to tell you all the things that he does, and also I wouldn't want to give away the surprise right up front. But if his name sounds familiar, it might be because you've seen him on Martha Stewart's show, or Conan O'Brien, or maybe Cake Wars on Food Network, maybe Storage Wars on A&E, or maybe his own series, Charles Phoenix Test Kitchen. The guy is really a hoot, and it's such a pleasure to have him on the show. I think you're going to enjoy it. If you are enjoying these episodes and you get to the end of this and you tell yourself that you had a good time, please do swing by the iTunes store or the podcast app. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review this show. It really will help build our audience. And if you really dig it, share with a friend. I would appreciate that a bunch, and our audience is growing because of people like you. Okay, I'm not going to say too much. I'm going to get to the interview. I'll check in with you about the halfway point, play a little bit of music, and as always, I'll show up at the end and have a few closing comments. All right, thanks a bunch for sharing your time with us. I'm going to turn off my mic. You turn on your ears and enjoy. See you on the other side. Hey, Charles, thanks for coming on Make Moves.
Make Moves? Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got the idea from my son.
Really?
Yeah.
We made some moves, right? To you to that sofa and me to this chair from the 1980s.
That's right, listeners. We're in separate sofas, separate chairs.
We are.
So far.
Is this your grandmother's coffee table?
No, this came from probably a dead woman in Montecito.
Okay, well that's close, isn't it? No, was that not? That was impolite, wasn't it? I apologize. Your grandmother might not be dead.
They both are, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, grandmas.
Yeah. So I'm glad you're coming on the show. I thought we could start by cluing in the audience a little bit. Let's do a quick overview of all the things you do, because I think if we don't, the audience out there won't get the full scope of your creative insanity. So lay out a few of the things that you do.
Well, I mean, basically I celebrate classic and kitschy American life and style, as that's what I say. The mid-century is my muse. How's that? The mid-century is my muse. So it kind of all got started. I grew up on a used car lot in Ontario, California. I became obsessed with classic cars. And then as a result of that, I kind of, at that time, they were already classic. They're still classic. Basically cars with big tail fins, American cars, those are my favorite. And I ended up kind of segueing into this weird career whereas by way of me finding a box of someone else's old Kodachrome slides in a thrift shop, which I discovered in 1992, this box of other people's old Kodachrome slides changed my life. I started doing retro slideshows in 1998, and I am a live performer. My shtick is the mid-century. My medium started as other people's old Kodachrome slides that I'd piece together and not make up anything out, just do observational humor, but kind of piecing them together with a beginning, middle, and an end. And then I started going to places that I would see in the slides and then include my little retro road trip, journey, adventure, extravaganza, extraordinaire within the show, mixed in with the vintage slides. So that's kind of what it's become. My live show is kind of my bread and butter. That's kind of the backbone of what I do. And so it's basically celebrating classic and kitschy American life and style, retro pop culture. That's my thing. And
from that, I've seen a few things came in. You have the books. You have the Test Kitchen.
Test Kitchen.
Yeah, tell everyone maybe a little bit about the book and the books and the test kitchen?
Well, the books. I have a brand new book coming out. I'm very excited about it. I think it's been 10 years since I've had a book. And this one is called Addicted to Americana. And that would be, I'm the one addicted to Americana. And Celebrating Classic and Kitschy American Life and Style is the subtitle. And it is a picture-filled, colorful kaleidoscope of retro pop culture as seen through my, collectorial and curatorial and exploratorial eyes. So it's me having collected all these vintage slides, so it's the best of my vintage slides mixed with my adventures going out and finding this stuff in the world now. So there's all kinds of wacky stories in there and amazing images, and it's quite a, I'm really proud of the way it turned out. It's coming out in October.
Great. Well, at the end, we can talk about where people can find that stuff. And what to the test kitchen, for me, it's video, so it's sort of the digital asset that this generation, this time in life, understands easiest. It's easiest to consume. I watched it with my daughter, and we just sat on the couch, and we were hilarious the whole time. What is that all about?
So you must have watched a string of my test kitchen videos, I guess, or maybe just one.
No, I think we watched everything.
A string of them.
Yeah.
I started seeing these in the vintage slides that I collect, which Kodachrome slides, in case people don't know, Kodachrome slides. Which is a very luxurious medium. In fact, one of the most luxurious mediums for anything ever to have been documented in a Kodachrome slide. So, a lot of people know what Kodachrome slides are. Younger generation has no idea. They're like, we don't know what you're talking about. What's a slide? A slide you slide down. No. The test kitchen, I started seeing things in other people's old slides, food items, and I started trying to recreate them, and then I started making up my own, which kind of evolved into me making videos. And the most famous thing that I created, and the most famous recipe that I came up with was the churpumple. That's a 3-layer cake. Each layer has a pie baked into it, cherry, pumpkin, and apple, churpumple. So the cherry in a white layer, the pumpkin in a yellow layer, and the apple pie in a spice layer. And then you encase the whole thing, you fill and encase the whole thing in cream cheese frosting. But my new version is going to be where first you put on German chocolate cake frosting, and then the cream cheese frosting on top of that. That's the new version. I keep coming up with little variations, but the churpumple, cherry, pumpkin, and apple.
I'm wondering, do you hang out and taste all these things and perfect them, or do you just sort of walk into the test kitchen and say, today, kids, we're going to...
Yeah, there's not a lot of testing going on. It's like it either works or it doesn't. I made a macaroni and cheese whiz cake, and that did not work at all. So it was like Kraft macaroni and cheese mixed in yellow cake batter. That didn't work. It turned the macaroni into shoe leather. So you couldn't chew it. It was just like, it was awful. It's weird. Highly processed foods, which is basically all of which I cook with, they're all heritage brand name products, things that I use in my recipes. You never know how they're going to kind of gel together. Just because you think they're going to be one way, it could go another way, just because they are so highly processed. And the chemicals have strange reactions. If you're at home cooking with meats and fruits and vegetables and, noodles, you kind of know how everything's going to go together, but not with highly processed foods.
Who knew there'd be a chemical reaction in macaroni and cheese?
Exactly.
You mentioned something, you on your website, you sort of discuss yourself as a showman versus a performer. I was wondering if you could talk about that distinction. And also you talk about humorist versus comedian. I know you're not doing stand-up, but it's all hilarious. Can you talk a little bit about those distinctions?
Well, showman versus performer. I don't know. That might have just been a word on my website just to say that I do shows or whatever. But I do consider myself a performer. When you get up on stage in front of people, it is a performance. What I do is an extension of myself, basically. The way I am on stage is quite exaggerated in just the tones that I use and the way you inflect a sentence to tell a story, get a point across, timing for comedy, the way you set up a story. It's you talking alone. It's not a conversation. It's a very different experience than being in real life. It's a very different delivery. It's a very different cadence. It's a very different it's more is more, at least I feel for me. I just tune up the volume. I would be like that all the time in real life. It's the way I really am, but I have to pull back a little just because I have to be a human being. I mean, I say, yeah, I mean, I just don't want to be over the top, not on stage. But on stage, I mean, go for it. Go for it. It's theater. It's not real life anymore.
And, you talk also on your website about being an ambassador for Americana. And I don't know if this is a question, maybe an observation. I think it's interesting that you are giving Americana back to America. You're actually an ambassador from a different time. We're all well, and unless something's changed since I woke up today, we're all still in America, but I think it's funny you're giving it back to America.
Well, I'm kind of helping to define what it is to this generation and what it means and where to go to find it, and when you find it, how to experience it, and why it's important. I mean, why be interested in this kind of stuff? I mean, well, let me tell you why it's important. I mean, mainly it's because it's a huge, huge part of what's American. I mean, I can't cover everything, of course, but I can cover a bunch of stuff. And, it's part of what defines us as a country. I mean, and what it's national pride in part, and it's what we, to me, in my opinion, what we need to, push forward for future generations to know about.
Well, this is not a question that I had, written down ready to ask you, but what is it that makes you compelled to feel like that's necessary? Are you seeing some decay out there?
Well, I see that
you've taken it on as quite a responsibility.
I have. I see that there's been this body of work that America has done. Basically my time frame that I really focus on is like, post-war to like, maybe the 70s or whatever, this mid-century juggernaut, this cultural juggernaut that happened in the United States between creativity and productivity and consumerism, I mean, was nothing like the universe had ever known before. This is a major, major step in mankind, what happened in the United States after World War II in the 50s and 60s. I mean, it's second only to the Big Bang, in my opinion. Culturally, and I mean, in so many ways, productivity, is that a word?
Yeah.
Productively?
Now it is.
Thank you. I like to make up words, and there's no law against that, by the way. But anyway, yeah, I just see that there was so much that happened. I mean, it's such a fascinating, for me, it's an interesting, they're interesting subjects to present. They present well. There's a lot of things in the mid-century, of the mid-century era that are great stories to tell, and stuff they made, it kind of has a flair and it's colorful, like the Cars, for example. So if you kind of point out ABC, why this is interesting, why this is unique, it's very theatrical looking. People tend to be able to focus on it if I give them the tour of what's special about it and how to enjoy it. I seem to be pretty good at getting their attention. So that's kind of why I do it. It's passion. These are my passions. These are my interests. And I want to share my passion and my fashion. That's kind of normal, right?
Yeah, I think for at least 4 or 5% of the population.
For 4 or 5% of the population?
Yeah.
Okay, I've never heard it put quite that way, but okay.
I think the rest of us might be on a treadmill or something.
You are?
I'm not sure. Looking back at your path from, where you are right now and your, I want to say career, but it's your passion, it's your life. I'm not sure if those are indistinguishable things, but looking back from where you are right now, what would you describe as the big landmarks, aside from discovering the Kodachrome slides, the big landmarks or events or forks in the road or the big decisions that sort of got you right here? I mean, was there some spot where you could have said, no, I think I'm going to sell real estate for 20th century instead?
No, I could never do that because I'm so undisciplined in realms of like, doing things that I don't really want to do. Like study to how to be a real estate agent. I really admire all my friends and, people who are and do things like that. And, I'm more of a visual learner more than a reader. I only really read when it comes to doing research for something that I saw. That's kind of how my brain works. But the question was, what were the milestones? Well, the milestones, there really haven't been that many, I don't think. it's just kind of it's just kind of an evolution, you know. I mean, when I invented the chirpumple, that was kind of a big thing. People kind of glommed onto that. But you know what really speaks to what the high points are, or the tent poles or whatever, are things that people keep bringing up to you later. I mean, the stuff that lives on. You make a lot of content, you create a lot of product, but what holds up? You know, what shows, what performances, what videos, you know, I mean, it's what people mention to you when they, you know, what they remember, you know, and what kind of has legs, the books, you know. So, yeah, I mean, there's books. I've been on a few TV shows, and a lot of people watch TV, so you always get a lot of response when you're on television.
These are big shows, too.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. Like, what are you talking about?
What are some of the shows you've been on? I think they were big.
Well, let's see. I think the one that's probably been seen the most is Storage Wars. I was on that a few times, and that gets played over and over. I mean, I hear from people who, you know, say, we saw you last night. This was an episode I filmed 5 years ago. So they're still playing that. Yeah, I was on Cake Wars on Food Network. A lot of people watch Food Network. But, you know, I mean, that's not really my act. That's kind of their act and me fitting into their thing. So, you know, live on stage is where you really see me. I also do sometimes bus tours. I used to do a tour for 12 or 11 years or whatever I did. A few tours a year of downtown Los Angeles, and I called it the Disneyland Tour of Downtown Los Angeles. I said, we don't have one Disneyland, we have two. And so I basically kind of veiled downtown LA as a theme park. And the doing that completely spoke to a lot of people who were like, oh, I never go downtown LA, I'm scared, or whatever. But when I said it's just like a theme park, then they got it. It's like, oh, there's all these attractions you go to see when you're there, or, you know, you can only see a few at a time or whatever, depending on how long you want to spend there. But I treat the world like a theme park. I have a theme park mentality. I have a theme park sensibility. I was born and raised in Southern California going to Disneyland. And so, you know, I get it. The world is like a big theme park. It is. There's just no other way to see it, in my opinion. That's the way to experience it. There are attractions everywhere you go. I'm also like majorly obsessed with looking through the layers of time, which means that, you know, if you see something of a certain age, I mean, it could be only 20 years old or whatever, but just, you know, how did it age? What's its story? What became of it? Like a building or a car or, you know, things. So that's looking through the layers of time, watching a city evolve. I mean, you know, I'm 54 years old, so I'm old enough to have seen the evolution now of many, many things, big things and little things. Like, for example, I think we were talking about on the elevator on the way up here, shopping malls. I mean, talk about an evolution. You know, when I was a little kid, I can remember shopping malls were completely poised and proper and dignified, and they were pillars of sophistication. I mean, they really were. Everything about them was poised to be sophisticated. Well, that kind of went out the window.
Right.
That kind of went way out the window. But, you know, hey, nothing stays the same. Nothing lasts forever either. So, yeah, I mean, as far as, you know, what I look for, what I'm going for, what I'm into, I know what I'm looking for, and I know exactly when I find it. And that is stuff that has stories to tell, people that have stories to tell, that I can then kind of, you know, incorporate my own experience of finding that into my live show and tell the stories and of that.
Let me ask, you know, you are, as the best I can tell, a kind of a one of a kind. I mean, are you aware of that?
I've been told. Yeah. I've been told.
Which raises a few questions for me. One, you know, did you have role models that you're looking up to, or some reference point, or I mean, are you just inventing this all as you go? Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of an inventing as I go kind of a thing. I mean, you know, a lot of people have said to me, and I take it as a huge compliment. They say, "You're the next Huell Howser." You know Huell Howser, California's Gold. They say you're the next Huell Howser. And I take, like I said, huge compliment. I love Huell. I will never forget Huell, and he will always be a hero to me. The number one reason why he will always be a hero to me is because he documented so many things, people, and places that nobody else did. And to me, that is a very noble thing to do. So I met Huell a couple times, and I was actually on a show once. And I do have a Huell story. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay, the Huell story is that I was downtown. This is about well, I bet it's 13 years ago, I guess. I was signing a book, my book before the last one, which is coming out in October here. I was signing my book downtown at the public library, and I was looking down at my book, and all of a sudden this giant hand landed on my book, and I look up and it's Huell. And I stood up and I shook his hand and I said, "Hi, Huell. I'm Charles Phoenix." And he said, "I know who you are." And I said, "You do?" He goes, "Yeah, you were on my show." And I said, "Well, yeah, Huell, but that was like 15 years ago." "I know who you are." Just like that. And so about that time, he was asking me about publishing versus self-publishing, having a publisher versus not having a publisher, because he wanted to do a book. And so we had a moment of a conversation, but we were interrupted by this woman clear across the other side of the library lobby, which is pretty big, going like, "Oh my God!" like that. And she runs across, so me and him are standing side by side. She runs across straight for him and goes right up to him at the last second, turns to me and goes, "I've been to all your slideshows and I have all your books, and oh my God, I'm so happy to meet you." And Huell said, "I better go." And I never saw him again. So that's my Huell story. But I love Huell, yeah. So, because I'm talking about things that have happened in the past, and I kind of do it in, I don't know, Huell's style and my style are radically different. But people have made the comparison, which, is a huge compliment.
I can think of worse comparisons.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Huell and thought about him a lot growing up. I just thought what he was doing was important, as I think what you're doing is important.
Thank you.
Again, since there aren't a lot of people to compare yourself to, or I don't know if this career path exists outside of the path that you've made, do you have a way of defining your own success, either professionally or creatively speaking?
Well, yes, I do. I mean, basically, my idea of success is not necessarily how much money I have made or am making. My idea of success, for better or for worse, is, am I inspired? Inspiration is being successful. Being inspired is being successful. I mean, that's, to me, a success, is finding a reason to work. I mean, finding something to work for. Goals are everything. I think, and in my case, in my work, I have to set goals, not like I'm going to make this much money, but I'm going to go, I have this tip on something that could turn into a really great story, or I've discovered something. So my goal then is to go find it. So yeah, being inspired is to me being successful. I mean, when you're not inspired, when you're uninspired or whatever, I mean, that's just bad. That's a bad place to be. So having some place to go, having people to meet, having a story to tell, being engaged, that's being successful. I mean, as far as, you want to have a roof over your head and a ability to get around, and, maybe buy a new outfit every once in a while.
And what about, you make a lot of creative content of different types. How do you know when you've got it right? I mean, I'll tell you. That reminds me of Cubism. It's sort of like, no, that is.
I'll tell you how you know when you have it right. It's very simple. People tell you exactly what they think. If you put your creative work out there, or you put it out there, be prepared to get people. Not everybody's going to say stuff, but some people respond and they say, we really like that. I mean, for example, it's just as simple as, at its core these days, like, for example, Instagram. Well, I post stuff up on my social media, and sometimes it gets, more likes than others. I mean, that's the most basic way to see it. Really, in this day, is like, how many likes do you get? So some days you get more than others or whatever. But I just put stuff out there. Basically, this is kind of odd to say maybe, but at the end of the day, I have to be entertained by what I'm entertaining with first. I have to entertain myself if I can be self-entertained, then I can entertain everyone else. So I'm basically, what I talk about in my shows, the subjects that I cover, the stories that I tell, they have to be interesting to me. What I do comes from the heart. I mean, it's not an affectation. It's not fake. It's real. It's genuine. So, I have to be inspired by what I'm showing and telling. Otherwise, it just falls flat as a pancake. I've even tried lying on stage and not lying down. Is that laying down? Laying. I've even tried, occasionally I've made up a story or made up a piece of a story or something like that. And I've learned never to do that. It's just stupid falling flatness waiting to happen. The truth comes from, the fun and the passion comes from the real truth that happened.
So I was going to ask you if you ever felt like you wanted a do-over, or you got too far down this path and you thought, I wish I could do something else now, but I'm, this far in my life, or it doesn't even seem like that's registering in your mind.
Not at all. No. I'm going after, I'm going after what I'm going after. Basically I'm looking for treasures and time warps and the stories to tell. And that's really what I'm doing. I just try to be a creative person. In every aspect of my life, I try to be creative. I was just kind of hardwired that way. And I think, part of the ego of a person like that is to try to be different. To try to do something, to challenge yourself to do something or come up with something that nobody else has really done before, to be unique. And I had that in me as a small child, that I wanted to paint my way or write a sentence my way or whatever. And, it met, I can't even speak. It met with mixed reviews, like, in school. So, because you have to write a sentence a certain way.
Right.
But, I always wanted to be creative, and I've had some creative successes, and some things that I've done didn't work. Whatever. That's part of the game, and I'm fine with that.
Now you're at this point where, a lot of what you're doing is working, and you seem to have established yourself. You have a life. You pulled up in a car today. You're wearing clothes. You're probably going to go eat dinner. I think I don't want to say you've arrived on the grandest scale, but you're surviving. I'm wondering, when you have enough to lose, what starts to feel like a risk to you? Like what's a vulnerable spot for you to be in at this point?
Well, that's an interesting question. Basically, my bread and butter is doing live shows. Mm-hmm. That's where that pays my bills. That pays for everything else. So, if the phone doesn't ring, gigs don't come. So then I'll have to generate my own gig. So if I had waited for the phone to ring, I would have never gotten to this point. I just started producing my own events, and within the realm of producing my own events, then other entities call and say, we want to hire your show. So I kind of do both. I produce some of my own events, and I wait for the phone to ring at the same time. So it's kind of back and forth. I get hired by civic theaters and museums and colleges. That's kind of the thing, is when the phone doesn't ring, you can't just sit there anymore. You got to go out and make your own show, sell your own tickets, and, if you have to, pop your own popcorn.
What about, this is a little bit of a shift in questioning here, but, there's sort of the outer packaging of what you are. You're sort of like a one-man thing, but I'm kind of assuming that you don't do all of this alone. I'm kind of wondering about, maybe professionally or personally, what does the support network look like for you? How many people have to believe in this dream with you in order to get it done every day? I'm wondering what that looks like.
Well, the career that you're talking about, and the reason I'm here, is because I started doing the slideshows. I started being a live performer on stage. That's when it kind of kicked into being, going from me just liking retro and vintage things and stuff, to really kind of kicking into a business. I was in show business, and I did my slideshows for free at first, until someone said someone would pay for this. I said, good, because I could use the money. So, but wait, what was the question?
Well, I was just wondering, this.
Oh, the support system.
Yeah.
So, my longest surviving, or not surviving, but my original support system that's still intact is my librarian, Teresa, who comes over once a week and basically keeps track of this massive collection of other people's Kodachrome slides that I've amassed, and I'm still amassing. Together we edit every collection, and then we decide what category every image is going to go in. And no, we don't scan all the images. That would take forever and be extremely costly. But then, 1 in a million basically slides, it makes it into my slideshow or whatever. But the slideshows that I do all have there's a lot of different subjects that I cover. Some are very local centric, like I've done shows in, Denver called Colorado Land, and shows in Arizona called Arizona Land, and shows in Southern California called Southern California Land, and shows in Long Beach called Long Beach Land, and the Retro Holiday Slideshow. So I have a lot of different subjects that I cover, but it's mostly, there's a lot of subjects.
Well, aside from, your librarian, I'm what, and this.
Well,
this
okay,
is, yeah.
Okay. You want to know? I have a guy who works on basically uploads everything onto my website that's happening. So I have a webmaster, and basically it's just kind of a maintenance program of keeping the new stuff up and taking the old stuff down. And I have a young lady who sends out my mailer every week, my emailer, which you can sign up for on my website, which is charlesphoenix.com. I have a manager type. That's funny, he'd laugh at that, who basically negotiates all my contracts and with companies and, entities. There's contracts galore. In the case of the book that I just worked on, I had an art director that I worked with, me and her. I kind of came to her with all of the images and the stories and everything, and then basically together we spread them out over 176 pages. So I wish I had more of a support system. I want a full-time videographer and / editor to make digital video content all the time, like constantly, like a show. I would love that. And I would love to work with the art director. I would love to work with her now full-time as having her be my creative director. So, which means kind of managing to me, it means managing my creative ideas and kind of just bouncing creative ideas off, and how to monetize those. After all, at the end of the day, it is business. It is business. I am in show business. I have to pay the bills, so you have to kind of, I wish I didn't have to be so responsible about money. Money is not my number one motive. Being creative is.
Right. But it is a requirement of getting by every single day.
You have to. It's the program of life. It's part of the program of living on this planet. You've got to pass some money through your hands and your bank accounts and all that. Everything costs.
Do you feel like you ever need to explain yourself or justify yourself to outsiders, people who aren't on the inside? You've got sort of a neat niche, but
it's hard.
What happens when you go to the bank and you say, "I'd like a loan for a..." Wait, you're a what? Do you ever feel that need?
I don't even know what to call myself. That's the problem. I'm not like a violinist or something like that. That would be easy if I could just say I'm a violinist. I love violinists, of course. Who doesn't? But yeah, I basically say, the first thing that I say is, if someone says, "What do you do?" I say, "I'm an entertainer." Because I used to say I'm a historian, but you know what I learned early on in the realm of my being in show business and charging money for tickets? History has very little value in our society, but entertainment has massive value. So they said, "You're entertaining. Yeah, you're talking about history, but you're making it entertainment." And so I kind of say it's infotainment, because you do learn when you come to my show. You learn about stuff. It's history disguised as humor, and humor disguised as history, really. That's kind of the way it really is. But I say I'm an entertainer. Entertainers are worth more than historians. Names, words are so powerful.
I told you guys Charles was a hoot. Isn't he fun? All right, anyway, right now, with permission of Ropeadope Records, we are listening to the song Dubplate Swing by Leon Foster Thomas. It's off his album Metamorphosis. Swing by MakeMovesWithJohn.com. Find the blog post for this episode, and you will be able to find links to purchase this tune and learn more about Leon Foster Thomas. Well, you mentioned how what you do is not actually a persona that you adopt. I mean, I think you said more than anything, it's you turned up to 11, and you actually just have to dial it back in day-to-day life. I'm wondering if you feel in day-to-day life sort of misunderstood or understood or not seen, or all.
No,
have you sort of found a good way to just navigate through the world with who you are?
Yeah, totally. I mean, no problem. I'm a very social person. I enjoy meeting people. I always ask my first question is, where are you from? I always love to know where everyone's from, and if I've been there or not, and if we can talk about it. There are treasures everywhere, around every corner, no matter where you go. The world is a wonderland to discover. But I also like to know what people do for a living. I'm nosy that way. That's not that nosy, is it? But one of my shticks is, like, when I'm meeting people after shows and stuff, I always say, where are you from? Oh, we're from blah, blah, blah place. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And then I say, are you in show business? And they always say, no. Are you in show business? Did I ask you that? No, I didn't. No, I don't know why. I love to ask people if they're in show business. It's just a weird quirk of mine. But I find it amusing. You have to amuse yourself a little bit, because, you have to find the humor and the joy of social interaction.
It's not everybody else's responsibility to amuse you.
Right.
So you have to do it yourself.
Well, yeah. And I amuse pretty easily. I mean, I'm pretty amused. Just the world around me, mostly amuses me. I find inspiration all over the place. I'm very interested in a lot of things and a lot of people and, places.
You've done a lot of things to get here, and you're doing a lot now, and I feel like it's a fair question to ask, where is this Charles Phoenix Parade of Life going? What are you hoping? I mean, do you have some bucket list items? Where are you pointed with all this?
What I'd really love to be able to do is take it to a way broader scale. I'd love to have a show like Anthony Bourdain has, but kind of the Americana version of that, really. I think that America is ready to look at Americana and celebrate it in a very positive, upbeat way. It's kind of a learning and entertainment at the same time. I would love to do that. That's a tough game to play. That's a really, really difficult chess game to play. Show business is like a chess game. I mean, I guess all business is, but I would love to do that. I would like to take my live on stage shows to, frankly, to have them be more in demand and have play in bigger houses. I would like to travel more. I would like to have a bigger staff of people to assist my creative endeavors and to help make my vision come true of doing all of these things. I would like to have, how's all this? Okay, products. I would like to have more products. I have very few products. I have a few books that I've done, and a brand new book, as I told you, but Addicted to Americana. But I would like to have more products, and I would also like to, what I do has a wide, oddly to me, like you were mentioning just now, your teenage daughter that enjoys my test kitchen videos online, and you did, is that you watch them together. I hear that, and there's no better compliment. There is no better compliment when you put something out there, to know that it's crossed generations. That's the best compliment of all. I mean, tell your daughter her 15-year-old compliment is really the best, because 15-year-olds are the most honest, more even so than a 9 or 8-year-old. I think.
You realize I run a risk in telling my daughter that her opinion is more powerful than mine.
Well, good. Go for it. You know what? No, I think it's really important for them to know that they really do matter, and their opinions matter. We may not agree with them always on everything, but in the case of your daughter liking I'll take my test kitchen videos. I'll take that. But yeah, when you're able to go cross-generational, and I have a rare product, a rare show that people bring their teenage kids, even sometimes their older little kids, and if they have an attention span, and they bring the grandparents, and everyone enjoys the show. I mean, my shows are really rapid paced. I cover a lot of subjects quickly, and they're comedy based. So you get information, laugh. It's storytelling. But at the end of the day, it's the pace of it, I think, that is why, I have the attention span of a 2-year-old. So I had to do the show in my pace of being able to keep paying attention. Because if it's not going to change subjects every 3 minutes or 2 minutes, I'm over it.
Well, I mean, you mentioned you want to sort of have this go to a bigger, broader scale. Some of it could be politics. Some of it the politics of the business, the promotion of the business, and you mentioned the timing. You think the timing's right, but what do you think are the big hurdle? I mean, you already work hard. You're already working on it all the time.
Basically, it's kind of it's numbers. I mean, it's economics. It's everything's numbers. So it's basically, me doing what I've never really done, or never really thought was that important. But the more I do this, the more I realize marketing, I don't really do any marketing. I just throw everything out there. Having a very cohesive marketing campaign with the products that I do have, which is my live shows, my books, whatever, being smarter about marketing. Also getting investors to invest in the product and the future of the product, so I can expand and do more video content, and just having more of a promotional capabilities behind me. And it all just costs money. I mean, you got to pay to play, basically. So to do a show costs money, to promote a show costs money, to provide or to do publicity, it all costs money. Everything costs. So
you mentioned that you're interested in dead malls or the decline of retail space. What other outside of sort of the caricature of yourself, what other things captivate you that don't make it into your shows or that don't make it into your products? What other things?
Well, that's a good question. That's a very good question. What am I fascinated by that doesn't make it into my shows? A lot. Only kind of the A+++ stories or experiences or images that I find or whatever really make it. So there's a lot of stuff that just isn't quite, showy enough to show and tell, so I don't. But, like dead malls, they don't really photograph or play that well. At least I haven't been able to really do anything much with dead malls. And plus dead malls are a little downer. Everything I do kind of has more of an upbeat, more or less. It's a positive thing. I'm showing you beauty, not decay, mostly. But I do find beauty in decay. And I'm a realist, so I realize that just because shopping malls are going downhill does not mean the world is coming to an end. No, not even close. Not even close.
You said something kind of telling, just really briefly. You said they don't present well, or they don't photograph well, and that
shopping malls.
Yeah, and that reminded me of what you were saying earlier, which is you're a visual person.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if I could hammer down on this a little bit. It sounds like you're consuming the world visually.
I am.
And if you can't find a way to make it interesting visually, it doesn't make the cut.
Right.
when did you discover this about yourself, or can you even avoid this about yourself at this point?
Well, when did I discover that what?
That you were just sort of visually...
I don't know. I just kind of figured it out like 2 years ago that I have a photographic memory. I mean, for things that are interesting to me. It's weird. It's like I've had this, it's my way my brain works. It's been my whole life, but I just kind of put a title on it. It's like, oh yeah, I must be one of those people with a photographic memory because I can remember things like in full detail, or scenes or situations or whatever. But what was the rest of the question? Sorry.
Well, just, when did you, you said now a couple of years ago, when did you figure it out? And I'm just sort of, I'm fumbling around a little bit to figure out, how that shapes your view of the world. I mean, a lot of things, for example, I was in a movie the other day and the music was just really captivating to me because I'm an auditory learner and that's how I work. I can't make sense of the world visually a lot of times. I have to hear it, but that means that I'm focused on things that sound cool. And I'm wondering, so is this part of...
I'm focused on things that look cool, I think. Mostly because that's my livelihood. That's my survival tactic. That's what I have. That's what I can, that's what I kind of hone in on and focus on. And therefore it becomes my survival. It's like, we got to find our way in this world, unless you have daddy Warbucks or mommy Warbucks, which means someone to pay all your bills. You got to figure out a way to, put a roof over your head or whatever, or so that's my survival tactic, is finding amazing things and stories that fascinate me and then telling them and showing them. That's kind of my survival. Being creative occupies my time, and going in search of inspiration and going in search of things that I'm inspired to go find, or whatever I'm trying to say. I'm saying a lot and not saying anything, but I don't watch television. I don't really need to be entertained that much. I'd rather be the entertainer than be entertained. I'm not opposed to it, and I do have some things that I do find entertaining, but I threw my television out the window when I was, like 22 years old. I grew up watching TV. Major amounts of television. I learned about life from watching television, basically. So it's a warped sense of what life is at. I thought life was a fairy tale up until 5 years ago. And then I realized, wait a minute. No, if your life isn't a fairy tale, that doesn't mean you're not having a bad life. That means you're ridiculous for thinking that it would be in the first place. Life is life. It's not a fairy tale. But it's just weird that way. It's like you have this warped sense of the way things are or should be or aren't. And, so anyway, now I got off track. ADD, there we go again.
ADD to the rescue. I was reading this interesting article about how ADD actually is... ADD sufferers are actually really creative because there's sort of like a throttle that limits what can get in the brain or out of the brain. And for people with ADD, everything comes in and everything comes out.
I also find in creativity, goals or deadlines, I should say deadlines, are a very important part of creativity for me. And, like for example, like if I'm doing a show, the show's Saturday night at 8 o'clock, well, that's your deadline for, coming up with content or, whatever you're going to present. If you say we're going to write a book, we'll write it when we get around to it. Well, it's never going to get written. But if there's a deadline, it's like helps you make decisions. Time is compromise. So you've got to compromise your creativity to the realm of the amount of time you have to do it in. You have so much time, come up with something, come up with X, whatever it is, but you only have X amount of time to come up with X. That helps me tremendously. Projects that have no deadline are dead to me.
Yeah, well, I guess scarcity in some way of time forces you
to
get some things done.
Right, get creative. Get cracking.
This actually isn't necessarily about your career, and it's not. But at some point, you have this incredible connections for classic cars. Do you collect them?
That is part of my career.
Well, yeah. I guess that's true. It is part of the showpiece of what you do. But
it is.
Are you a collector, or do you just know everybody who has them? Or
I have been a car collector. I've collected in my day of being a classic car collector. I had over a couple hundred classic cars.
Wow.
That was in the 80s and 90s, basically. So I am obsessed with classic cars. I always have been, I always will be. I grew up on a used car lot, so the cars I like are the cars that I grew up with on the used car lot in Ontario, California. My dad was a used car dealer. They're all basically the American cars of the 50s and 60s and early 70s. Those are the ones I just know all the years. I'm like Rain Man that way or whatever. Well, I think I am. I never saw the movie Rain Man, but no, it's just like, it's a fixation of mine. It's just my brain, it's like everyone's brain is so different.
Do you feel like the people you run into in that community, are they obvious? Do they understand what you're doing in your career, or is it just sort of like you have cars in common?
Well, no. I mean, a lot of people who have classic cars also like other vintagey things. So they like my style, they like my show and tell style, and so they glom onto it. I mean, it's you don't have to be into retro to like my show necessarily. It's entertainmental enough. Entertainmental?
Yeah, another word.
Sorry, I mean I guess I should have said entertaining enough. You don't have to be like a person obsessed with vintage or retro or whatever, or mid-century, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, it's what I do. I consider a pretty easy sell once they see it. It's hard to explain. What? It's a slideshow? What? Slideshow? Slideshow on your computer? No, it's a slideshow. It's a little hard to explain. And that's been a little bit of a hindrance for me, is that what I do is different. My act is very unusual. No one else has an act like I do. So it's hard to explain what it's going to be like. I mean, what the feeling is going to be. It's like, what? They don't get it. But and some people come back again and again and again. I mean, basically, showbiz is built on two things. One is repeat customers, and the other is new customers. So I have a lot of repeat customers, and without your repeat customers, it's hard to keep going.
Do you actively do things sort of like to maintain loyalty of your people, or it's just they resonate?
I mean, not really. I enjoy meeting people after my shows. I'm a very social person, so I think we kind of circled on this before. But like I said, I always say, "Where are you from, and are you in show business?" Then they tell me what they do. Or do. Do you say do or do?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either. No one knows that the law of do and do, but anyway. I'll have to have someone who doesn't speak English as their first language to explain that to me. So where were we?
I was just wondering if you had sort of a loyalty factor. Do you work at it, or just it works for those people?
I mean, I think that the loyalty factor that I have and the fans that I have gotten over the past 19 and a half years of doing these live shows is, I think they see that it's from the heart. I mean, it's I'm genuine. This is genuinely me, and my enthusiasm is genuine. This isn't an act. Yes, I bottle it and I put it on stage, but it's not an act. It's real. This is my reality show that I'm sharing with you, and my reality show that I'm sharing with you is my passion for Americana and celebrating it, putting it up on a pedestal and telling people why it's so special and how to experience it themselves. When you go to X place, you do this, you do these three things, and then you've done it. You can leave, you can go on, and you can say, I've done it. So, it's kind of, you have to lead them to the water, and then you have to show them how to drink it and tell them how good it tastes.
Well, I think you've been extremely successful at what you're doing, which is not the norm, and I'm proud of you. Not that you needed my approval, but I'm proud of you for chasing it. And
well,
I find it very entertaining, and I think as a person, I'm just glad that there is a person like you out there doing this.
Thank you. That's a very nice compliment coming from you here in this pillar of civilization.
Well, I thank you so much for your time. I want to just give listeners out there a long list of places they can find out more about you, or a short exhaustive list. And of course, I will include all these links in show notes. Where can people find out more about you?
CharlesPhoenix.com. I mean, that's kind of, everything basically shows up there. more or less.
Yeah, and I would encourage everyone to follow the social media buttons because you do social media as an art form.
Well, thank you. I wish that I were better at it. I mean, social media is such a huge piece of the pie these days, and it's kind of a miracle of the modern age. I mean, and the fact that it's kind of free is just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I personally find all the content you put there intriguing and entertaining, and that's not an accident, and it seems like you work at it, and for that, I thank you, but I also want listeners out there to go check it out because ultimately it will lead them to your website or one of your shows or one of your books or one of the cool things that you come up with in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for coming on Make Moves. I hope to be in touch soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, be well. There you have it, folks. This episode is coming to a close. Big thanks to Charles Phoenix for coming on the show. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. It was fun to talk with him. He is such an animated guy. Please do swing by makemoveswithjohn.com. You'll be able to find lots of convenient links so you can learn more about Charles and what he's up to, and also get some more information about the music that was played for you in the middle of this episode. Coming up real soon, we're going to have the next episode with Glenn Phillips, a tremendous songwriter and member of the classic band Toad the Wet Sprocket. A lot of great stuff got shared in that conversation. Can't wait to share it with you. Okay, until then, you please take good care of yourselves and go out there and make moves.